Okay, welcome back to another installment of Ever 17 Out of Infinity, and we're trying to finish Koko's run. Hopefully, I'll do this before the end of the year. Oh my goodness. I've been trying, but there's a lot to read because there's a lot to explain. Anyway, just a reminder, we're doing Koko's run and spoilers, but we're playing as both Takeshi and Hokuto's run. So just to recap on what happened in the last episode, we have, what's it called? Okay, so in Hokuto's timeline, we pieced together that Takeshi and Tsugumi might be our parents, but for that to be true, the year would have to be 2034, and it is! And he passes out, and we flip back to Takeshi's timeline, and we learn that Yubisei Harukana had a horrible heart condition and would die soon. So instead of dying, a doctor gave her the option to give birth to her perfect clone, who would then be named Yubisei Akikana, and that's the person that we see in Hokuto's timeline. So back in Hokuto's timeline, we, with Sarah, confront Tsugumi and call her mommy. And Tsugumi all but gives in and admits the guilt that she had felt when she abandoned her kids, but her reasons were kinda justified. Turns out that Lablik was looking for Tsugumi ever since the first catastrophe, and they've been constantly running away, so there was no way to properly raise children. And we learned that Hokuto and Sarah do not have the Ever 17 virus, aka Cure, so they will not be staying perpetually the same age as newborns or whatever. We also learned that Takeshi Kuronari is our father, but from a different timeline, so that means that the Takeshi in Hokuto's timeline is an imposter. So we confront him, and we find out his name is actually Kaburaki Ryogo. So we snap back to Takeshi's timeline, and we realize that he's actually the brunette kid in Takeshi's timeline. You know, the one that we thought that we were this entire time, and then we realized after we looked in a mirror that we're actually blonde and look nothing like him. Hokuto's timeline, we start to piece together the different timelines must mean that someone has been orchestrating the same catastrophe twice. But who, and more importantly, why? So let's continue along in our quest to finish this before New Year's. I hope I get my New Year's wish. Anyway. Alright, so we're in Takeshi's timeline, and we're standing in front of Koko in the Cosmic Whale Room.
Hey, Whale-san! What time is it?
A whale of a time! I'm glad that we're starting off with good jokes. You better not have asked me to come all this way just to tell me that stupid joke. And it's only 8 a.m. in the morning.
No, I just wanted to go on a date with you and...
The date?
Yeah. Well, Taki-pyeon, you like me, right? So that means we're going out. And when a boyfriend and a girlfriend tell each other their true feelings, everyone knows it's best to be under a starlit sky. And that's why I brought you here, to Whale-san. Actually, I'm just teasing you. You're already married, right, Take-pyeon?
Huh?
Don't be shy. I know everything there is to know about you. And not only just you, I know everything there is to know about everything.
Everything?
Well, yeah. Of course, I'm a psychic. For as long as I can remember, I've been able to talk with people from different worlds.
Different worlds? Meaning the other side?
No, not like that. Just another world that isn't this one. If I borrow the sight from people in the other world, I can see everything from the past and future.
Oh, really? Wow.
Like the people in the second dimension, they can't really see the whole world, right?
Huh?
You can't see those huge line drawings at Nazca, Peru from the ground, right? And let's say you have a really cool drawing of a robot on your computer display, one of the dots on the screen. They can't see the whole drawing.
Yeah.
So what can they do when they see what can they do to see the whole picture? Well, for the pictures at Nazca, all you have to do is go up in the air and look down. And for the picture on your display, if you can get a little bit away from the screen into the third dimension, you can see it, right? We're in the third dimension, right? Only the third dimension keeps moving on forward in time. So in order to see it moving, you can't just stay in the third dimension. You'd have to look down at everything from the fourth dimension.
Come to think of it, didn't Sora mention something like this?
But I'm human and I can't get out of the flow of time, so I just borrow the viewpoint of the people from the fourth dimension.
Then what you're trying to say is that the people from the other side are really people from the fourth dimension?
Yep.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Well, I can. I really can. I really, really can.
Okay, so we've zipped back to Hokuto's timeline at 8:16 p.m.
Great, huh?
It's the third eye.
Yeah, you could call it that too.
Then you can tell everything about my past?
Well, I don't really think I can help you, Hokutan.
Huh?
Because you really aren't Hokutan, right? So you're borrowing anyone's perspective, I think. So you aren't borrowing anyone's perspective, I think. In your case, Hokutan, I'm pretty sure you're just perspective itself, right?
What do you mean?
Blickwinkle-san.
What?
I'm pretty sure Blickwinkle knows everything.
Blickwinkle? Just then. Kaboom! Whoopsie, sorry. Oops, sorry, I'm losing all my windows. Ooh. Boy, that is a sound effect. It's pretty long. I wonder if it'll just keep going. Ooh, that was a big kaboom! A massive boom rocked our eardrums. We all reflexively looked up. The ceiling of our world, the cosmos, had shattered. Immediately, a large amount of seawater rained down on us like an avalanche. Shards of the shattered wall cracked off and shot into the floor like bullets. I looked back, but Koko was gone. Koko! Nobody was there to respond. All the sound was drowned out by the water rushing in, such that we could hardly even hear our own voices. Droplets of water were falling from above, white mist was rising from below, and the water level was rising quickly. An incoming jet of water from the ceiling struck the whale, which suspended in the center of the room, and it bent backward hard, fell, and lay on the floor. Its big mouth flapped open, its pupils empty. The whale was dead. I turned around, cutting through the water, and fled from the room. The door to the cosmic whale room was closed with a gurgling sound.
Oni-chan, are you okay?
I spun around, drawn by Sarah's voice. She was there, standing, her shoulders heaving. I ran as soon as the alarm sounded, but looking over at Sarah's shoulders, I could see a couple people running towards us from the corridor. I returned my gaze to the door, but it didn't appear to be leaking. The cosmic whale room was flooded, but it looked as though the other areas were safe, for the time being.
Hey, Oni-chan.
Blood. Huh? You're bleeding. Sarah pointed to my left hand. I looked at my palm. Where had I gotten a cut? I had a shard slashed me when it fell and I just hadn't noticed? Or had I snagged it to something when I was trying to get out the door? At any rate, bright red blood was dripping from the side of my hand. Are you okay? Sarah took a white handkerchief from her pocket and took my injured hand in hers, binding the wound. Does it hurt? I shook my head. The truth was, I didn't feel anything. More important than a scratch on my hand. Blickwinkle. Huh? Sarah tilted her head questioningly. More than the injury, more than the flooding, more than anything, Koko's words were running through my head.
Blickwinkle-san.
Blickwinkle. Blickwinkle. Who are you? Who am I? Again, I could hear that voice again. Was it my voice, or was it someone else's? I kept staring at the palm on my left hand. The red stain slowly spread across the white fabric. Who are you? Who am I?
Because you really aren't Hokutan, right? I'm pretty sure Blinkwinkle-san knows everything.
Blick, winkle. Blick, winkle. Blood. The wet crimson stain spread, and blood fell in thick droplets, landing in puddles at my feet. It spread out in the water like smoke to eventually dissolve into the seawater. And just then, my vision grew red. May 6th, Saturday. I could see it. I could see everything. Everything in the year 2017. A continuous flow of fragmentary images. Pieces of the world flowed by without context. I was simply an onlooker of everything in the world. Yes, I couldn't take part. I could only watch. I was nothing more than a perspective. At 1:38 p.m., we see Koko, who's coughing up blood. Do we remember this? Coco's like, Koko groaned and pressed her hand against her mouth. Fresh crimson blood dribbled through the cracks of her fingers. A red stain spread on the floor of the control room.
This is bad.
Sora saying, these
symptoms are...
Symptoms? Who cares about symptoms, says Tsugumi. Can't you tell if this keeps up, Koko's going to... And Kaburaki, who is the kid in this timeline, says, Koko, hang in there!
Koronari, what are we gonna do?
Wait, don't panic. Everyone, just calm down. I was only a perspective, and I had no real sense of feeling. The link between my sight and consciousness had been broken, and all I could do was continually gaze at the scene unfolding before me. I felt neither sadness nor anger, neither patience nor despair. I was looking at the reality in front of me as one might stare at meaningless jumble of numbers. Tiefblau 2007, revision 17. I guess that's what that says, I don't know. The LMRI was scanning Koko's condition, the Tiefblau virus. Kaburaki says, Koko, hold on!
No, don't you die on me!
Koko's body lay on the examination table. Kaburaki held her thin arm intensely. Kaburaki says, sorry, open your eyes, Koko! Please, wake up! The kid grabbed hold of Koko's shoulders and shook her violently. Whoa, who is this? Holy shit. Everybody take a good look at Takeshi, who looks very different than what we remember. Wow, he has black hair. He looks very serious. Anyway. Takeshi says, Hey, cut it out. Stop it, kid. Takeshi pulled him back from Koko. What are you doing? Jackass, calm the hell down. What do you think that's going to accomplish, huh? But she's gonna... If we don't do anything, Koko's gonna die. Calm down. There's gotta be something we can do. Don't get crazy. Let's just calm down and think. Sora interrupted Takeshi with the kid in her hand. Looking all at the people gathered in the face, she announced,
There is an installation called IBF directly below us. The management company that built Lemu is Lieblich Pharmaceuticals. Their research facility is IBF.
IBF? Takeshi mumbled to himself. It seemed as if it was familiar to him.
There is a medical center there that is far superior to this one. At least from the information that I can get from Lemi's database, it appears that they have a new type of high-pressure oxygen treatment device there. And if we can treat her with that, her leukocyte, white blood cell activity should increase. And that should ease Koko-chan's condition somewhat.
Alright then, IBF. So all we need to do is get there and Koko can be saved, right?
However, in order to get to IBF, we have to get through Himmel, and Himmel's door isn't opening.
I don't care. We're going. There isn't any other way there. It might not work, but if we don't know that, we don't know that unless we try, right? Sora, show me how to get there. Hey, kid, give me a hand.
Okay.
Takeshi picked up Koko's inert body and carried her piggyback. They arrived at Himmel. The door was shut fast. Damn it, what are we gonna do? Nobody's saying anything. Pee-Pee's whining. Koko slid off Takeshi's back. She weakly hunched over on the floor. The color of her face had gone translucent white and her lips parched. Her eyes looked feverish. Just then... Oh god. The announcement says, Offen Sie die Tür von Himmel. It's in German. I'm so sorry, Germany. What's that announcement?
Someone is trying to access Lemieux's system from inside the room, from a terminal inside Himmel.
What? The access indicator light from the electronic lock began to blink and soon changed to green. The hatch lever raised and turned automatically. The door opened. It was pure white inside. Squinting against the brightness, they walked into the room to explore. It appeared as if the computer control room... Hey, someone's here! Did you open the door just now? He was someone passed out on the floor. He was a man who appeared to be in his 40s, dressed in a white lab coat. Hey buddy, are you alright? Takeshi rushed over to the man and lifted him up to a sitting position. The man didn't reply to Takeshi's call. He just sat there with his eyes closed. Who is this guy? Sora, do you have any idea who this is?
No, I am unable to verify his ID. But judging from the way he is dressed, it is safe to assume that he is a researcher here at the IBF facility.
The researcher let out a dry gasp and opened his eyes slightly. Hey, are you one of the staff from the research facility? Yeah, that's right. Doesn't seem like you're here to rescue me. With a shaking hand, he grabbed onto Takeshi. His hand was covered in blood. So there's still people left in Lemieux, and it's been 6 days since... What a surprise. Blood trickled from his mouth, and he smiled wryly. Hey, don't strain yourself. You still have to talk. You don't have to talk. Sorry. I'm so sorry. It's all our fault. What happened? Did something happen down there? Everyone stood quietly, gathered around the researcher, and seemed to have lost the ability to talk. The research worker murmured and looked up vacantly at all the figures around him. But why all this? After that, he was silent. His eyelids slowly closed. Hey, hang in there! Takeshi shook the man's shoulders, but there was no response. At least it seemed he was breathing. Well, we'll have to bring him with us. Takeshi nodded and stood up, then picked up the unconscious researcher. Watching the situation, Sora began a quiet explanation.
Everyone, at the far end of the room is another room. Can you see it? That is the compressor chamber for the IBF. Judging from my incomplete data, IBF is enclosed in a higher pressure gas than Lemieux. The IBF area is set to what is known as saturated diving specifications. This type of area is also probably more suitable for research with bacteria. The atmospheric pressure of IBF is actually about 12.5 atmospheres. I want all of you to enter that room. And after you spend about 1 hour in the compression chamber, you'll take the access elevator down to the IBF. I should have told you all about this as a precaution. You will not be able to retrace your steps easily from this point on. Please give this due consideration.
Following Sora's instructions, everyone headed into the IBF's compression chamber. A long compression started. During that time, nobody said a single word. It's 3:32 p.m. The compression finished. Everybody got aboard the lift. The door was sealed and the elevator started to lower as if it were sliding. The announcement says, Tief 70 meter, Tief 80 meter, Tief 90 meter, Tief 118 meter. Okay, whatever. The door opened and everybody poured out. It seemed that there was a pool where a small submarine could dock. And although the area was directly attached to the ocean, the inside and outside pressure were the same, keeping the ocean water out of the room. It was the same as turning cups upside down and putting it in water. They all stopped in their tracks and studied their surroundings intensely, as if waiting for an alarm to go off. There was no sign of anyone. Anyway, let's go where we have to go. They opened a watertight door and on the other side of the room and continued deeper into the installation, the examination room. The kid and you placed Koko, who they had been carrying, on a nearby bed. Tsugumi and Takeshi slowly lowered the researcher down into a chair. An LMRI, the same type that had been used in Lemieux's infirmary, was in the room. Hey, you? Where's that high-pressure oxygen thing that Sora was talking about?
How should I know?
Tsugumi, what should we do?
Well, we'll have to look for it. None of us know a thing about this place.
Wait! The researcher coughed as he spoke. Hey, don't move, are you okay? I've been better, but at least I'm alive. The researcher raised his hand weakly as he spoke. This smell. Is this IBF? So I'm back where I started. So you were working here. Well then, there's something that I want to ask you. We're looking for some kind of high-pressure oxygen treatment device. We've come as far as the examination room, but we don't have a clue what to look for. Can you help us, please? Oxygen treatment? Yeah, you're looking for the pods. There should be some alloy capsules with mats set inside of them. They look like a bunch of cylinders stuck to a pillar. Do you see them? Yeah, they're right in front of me. That's them. Hang in there. We found them, so don't waste your energy talking anymore, okay? New blood appeared on the researcher's closed hand as he wiped his mouth. Just take a look at the manual. They should be easy to operate. Okay, I gotcha. The strength left the researcher's hand. As he sat there, it seemed all the life had left the researcher's body and he looked like an old, withered-up tree. Let's get Koko into a pod, and this researcher too. Yeah. They put Koko and the researcher into separate pods and closed the lids. Did you find the manual? Yeah, this is the control panel. Flipping through the thick book that appeared to be the manual, you started operating the terminal from a short distance away. High pressure oxygen treatment set. Oh, I can actually skip this. Oh, I could have skipped this the entire time. Okay, well, we already know what happened here. It's basically they just kind of put him into the pods. I was like, I don't know if I can skip this because it's a new image of Takeshi, but I guess it doesn't matter. Anyway, they started searching around the facility. Their aim was threefold: to find a way to escape the facility and to see if any communication lines were open and to look for any other survivors. While Takeshi Sugumi and the young Kaburaki were searching around the IBF, you stayed with the resting Koko and researcher. Meanwhile, Takeshi and the others soon arrived at a small room covered in iron plating. There were a few computer terminals there with nobody stationed at them. Operating the terminals, they scanned through some of the information there. They were researching for any information that they could use and finally came across something interesting. IBF Visitor Registry, Yagami Koko. Koko's name was listed in the corner of a business log. Looking further into the file, there seemed to be a personal memo written by somebody. Author, Yagami Takeshi. I get to see my daughter for the first time in a while. Her school is on vacation, so she has a 10-day break. I've been trapped here for so long in this tin can doing virus research that I'm jealous. That aside, when I told her that special permission had been granted for her to come down to see the IBF, she sent me a happy reply saying that she would. We've exchanged mail every once in a while, but I wonder how long it's been since we've actually seen each other. I'll just be happy if she hasn't forgotten what I look like. Which meant that Koko had visited IBF once before May 1st. To meet her father. Postscript. It seems like T.Y.'s daughter is working part-time here at Leimu. I'm still not sure if I should tell him or... After that point, all the data was corrupted, making it impossible to check what else had been written. In the end, they found nothing. No way out, no means to communicate, and no survivors. After searching around, Takeshi, Kaburaki, and Sugumi all headed back to the examination room. Okay, so we're going to skip through. We're just going to talk about how everything's pretty bad. And I think the researcher just died. It's an unsettling silence. In the belly of the Iron Hulk, they stopped breathing and stood still. Their expressions were lifeless. It was impossible to tell what any of them were thinking. A white interior of the room was filled with a quiet calm. Time passed slowly, cruelly, crawling forward second by second. Takeshi and Yu leaned against the wall of the corridor. This is 4:42 p.m. Okay, so I think this is right after the researcher had died, so we're just gonna skip this. We're talking about what they were researching down here, I think. She touched Takeshi's shoulder slightly. It's you and Takeshi now. And traced her finger across his chest and then went back into the examination room. Left by himself, Takeshi started wandering aimlessly down the corridor. He turned right at a corner, then left, and continued walking with his hand still on the wall. He ended up in front of the IBF's large pool. and there was already somebody there. At 4:49 p.m. we see Sugumi. Sugumi was looking at the gentle ripples in the pool. As if she had drawn him in, Takeshi went to stand by Sugumi. Huh? Takeshi stopped suddenly. He turned around and stared at a spot on the wall. Takeshi, what's wrong? Sugumi noticed Takeshi. Following Takeshi's gaze, she turned her eyes to stare at the same spot on the wall. There was nothing there. Wait, no, that wasn't true. Both of their lines of sight were pointed at me. Takeshi and Sugumi were looking at me right then. I'm not really sure, but I felt like somebody was, staring at me. Takeshi turned back and said that to Sugumi. Huh. Sugumi tilted her head quizzically, and her eyes turned down to the side. She narrowed her eyes and searched Takeshi's face. Takeshi, your nose is bleeding. You've got a nosebleed. Huh? Takeshi quickly put his hand to his nose. His upper lip was wet with something. Hey, are you okay? Sugumi looked worriedly at Takeshi's face. It's fine. Takeshi looked up and wiped under his nose as he replied. I wasn't thinking about anything sexual. Absolutely, positively. It's not like that. I don't care about that. Well, alright then. His nose wouldn't stop bleeding. I look like such a dork. Who cares what you look like? I care. Looking like this in front of you, Takeshi spat out blood. I think this is at the point that we realize that everybody's got teeth blow, so... Copious amounts of fresh blood poured from his nose and mouth. Simultaneously, his knees buckled. What's wrong with me? Takeshi looked at his blood-covered hands and blinked. His legs swayed unsteadily, and the color quickly drained from his face. What's this about? Blood is... Takeshi! Takeshi, hang in there! No, I'm fine. Don't worry, Sugumi. Don't worry. You're not fine at all. You're bleeding all over, Takeshi. Alright, so now we're gonna rush him along to the entrance of the corridor, and from that entrance, a single shadow jumped out. It was Yubisei Harukana. Sugumi, Kurinari, the kid is in bad shape. Okay, so after that, using the LMRI, they found out that Takeshi, Yu, and the young Kaburaki were all infected with the Tiefblau virus. And using the orange serum, the three of them were given shots. After that, their symptoms improved a bit, but the severity of the situation had still not changed. What are we going to do about Koko? And we're going to skip ahead a little bit. Takeshi's face was still pale. It was hard to believe that it had ever been the color of a living person. His pupils were cloudy, his eyelids swollen, and sweat flowed freely down his face. Wiping down away that sweat, Takeshi wandered around the room. I'm not sure how long our condition will hold with just one shot. Hey, Yu, do you think there's anything we can do after it stops working? Yu was sitting in the corner, in the computer terminal, silently typing on a keyboard. Yu, tell me what we can expect. Don't talk to me, I can't concentrate. All right. I'm trying my best, but someone has put a lock on communications protocol and we can't make contact with the surface. But every once in a while I found some communication data that crosses through. If we can release that lock, anyway, we might be able to get through somehow. Or at least it's better than Leimu, where we had no way of making contact. Alright, well, show me what you got, genius. Okay. And looking like the dead, they both smiled weakly at one another. Alright, so I think at this point maybe we're going to talk about why some people haven't taken the shot. Takeshi is like, what? Don't you think it's strange that I don't need any serum, says Sugumi. Well, now that you mentioned it, yeah. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Fine. Oh, well, that's a relief. But don't you think it's strange? I'm the only one who doesn't show any symptoms of the Tiefblau virus. Isn't that odd? No, it's not odd because you have the Ever 17 thing. It's fine, we knew this. Well, no, I mean, Takeshi smiled softly and continued. You said it yourself. The functioning of your immune system and metabolic efficiency are remarkable, and your telomeres never stop regenerating. Meaning, it's yeah. She looked down slightly and puffed out her cheeks. She raised her eyes. Tsugumi walked over to Yu and murmured. Tsugumi says, would you scan me? Could you check me? Curie virus P carrier. Those words appeared on the LMRI display without a sound. The screen showed that Tsugumi was a Curie virus carrier. The Tiefblau virus was also in Tsugumi's body as with the others, but her genetic makeup had been altered by Curie, and because of the peculiar functioning of her immune system, antibodies had been generated instantly, driving out Tiefblau. Curie. Tsugumi had gone beyond the normal human being capability, and she had mentioned that she was special. Successful cases of genetic manipulation were probably exceedingly rare. Curie. Looking at the results of the LMRI scan, Yu nodded. So the Curie virus really does exist. You know about it, Yu? I found it in Leimu's database, but before that I'd heard about it once from a certain person. A certain person? Someone called Marino Shigezo. He's a world-renowned geneticist. He told me about it when I met him. And that's the person that was the weird doctor that gave her the ability to give birth to her own clone. Anyway.
In this world, there are probably at least 2 or more types of the Curie virus, so this must be one of them.
Yes, me. I'm a carrier of the Curie virus. I'm already not like other people, but...
Tsugumi, why would you...
I already told Takeshi, but I also want you to know, Yu. Besides, it's easier to have the machines show you than explain it myself, right?
That's why you wanted me to scan you?
Yeah. Well, I don't suppose anything changes now that you found out. Tsugumi laughed at herself derisively. Tsugumi... It's strange, Takeshi. Biting her lip, Tsugumi was trying her best to laugh. But there's something even stranger than me. This machine knew right away that I had the Curie virus. Why do you think? There have only been a few documented cases of Curie in the whole world. Why do you think that this computer could scan it so quickly? Takeshi's pupils dilated momentarily. He squinted and replied slowly. Oh, so that's it. Labelic Pharmaceuticals already knew about the existence of the Curie virus, just like Tiefblau. Yup. Tsugumi turned up her face at the ceiling and closed her eyes, saying, And that's why I came here to Leimu, to IBF. I had to come here. I wanted them to know the true gravity, the seriousness of my existence. But I've come all this way and nobody's here. So stupid. I'm so stupid. From her closed eyes, a single tear fell. It suddenly became dark, and from the darkness I could only hear voices. Hey, Takeshi, have you ever hated everything? What a question. And thought that you wanted to die? No. Where was this, I wondered? Was I inside someone? I couldn't see anything. All I could hear were voices coming from somewhere, passionate voices, an agonizing scream. We aren't going to die. We aren't going to make it out of here. We're going to make it out of here, and we don't have any time to waste here. I'm going to get out of this hell. I can save you. I'll prove it. Everyone. I'm going to save everyone who's here. I won't let a single one die. The voice cut out suddenly, and the darkness cleared like a fog. My vision returned gradually. It's 5:59 p.m., and we're still in the IBF chamber. The scene spread out gradually before me, but I had still lost my center. Other than my sense of impending disaster and the stagnant, heavy air around me, I could feel nothing else. Look, stare intently. Why do you even bother looking? Was a doubt that crept through my mind, but it faded quickly. All I could do was watch the events in the world as they passed by. I watched. I was an existence that could only watch. A perspective was all I was. Takeshi says, It's time for desperate measures. Takeshi said that suddenly. His eyes shone with a dull light. It seemed that the serum was losing its effect, and although Takeshi, Yu, and the young Kaburaki seemed to be maintaining their composure, their breathing was ragged. Well, I'm not a doctor, so I can't really tell, but smallpox, penicillin, snake antivenom. You're pretty smart, so this should make sense to you, right? No way. It's our only chance. Our body is creating antibodies to the Tiefblau virus, so we'll use that. If we can get those antibodies, there's a small chance that we can fight off the Tiefblau. It's too dangerous. Do you have any idea how hard it is to make antibodies and vaccines that work? There's almost no chance. If you make even the slightest mistake, it could kill all of you. Well, if we don't do anything, we're dead anyway. Tsugumi's expression froze. Yu and the young Kaburaki, who had been staring at the ground the whole time, raised their heads and looked at Takeshi. That's right. If we don't do anything, we're dead. And if that's the case, it's better that we take this risk, no matter how small our chance of survival. Fresh blood flew from Takeshi's mouth. Crimson mist danced in the air and floated away. So they're just talking about manifesting, like, antibodies from Tsugumi. Anyway, after waiting for Tsugumi to compose herself, they carried out the procedure. Drawing blood from Tsugumi's arm, they extracted the antibodies and gave shots to Takeshi, Yu, and the young Kaburaki. And they weren't able to give Koko a shot because she was still in the pod undergoing treatment. It would still be a while before she could leave. They made another dose of the antibodies for when Koko was ready and put it in the equipment storage container on the desk. Almost an hour had passed since the shot. The antibodies didn't seem to be having any effect, and the 3 infected people were lying, worn out, on their beds. Tsugumi said something briefly to Takeshi and went back to Reimu. "I'm going to get Chami and bring him back," were the words that she left him with. Takeshi nodded weakly and closed his eyes. So this is all stuff we've seen. 9:16 p.m. Suddenly, Mission Control is finally talking to us, and we have a moment to escape, but he's gotta go back and get his girl. So Takeshi's running up the stairs, and he looked down at the PDA. There was a life reading in the infirmary. The map showed surrounding corridors in the flooded area. There was no access to the air. Blah, 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 blah. Arriving in Zweiderstock, he threw himself into the water. In order to reach the corridor, reaching the infirmary, Takeshi dove, and at that point there was no way to access it without swimming. Takeshi turned the PDA's backlight on. It shined a weak light in the area before him. Maybe he realized that there wasn't any point, but Takeshi turned off the light and kept swimming in total darkness. He swam and kept swimming. Takeshi propelled himself forward as though he were possessed. There was no sign of fear or unease in the way that he moved. Excuse me. He fiercely tore at the wall of water surrounding him, progressing steadily forward. And he was being reckless, perhaps even acting insane, but he was willing to sacrifice it all for what he was convinced he had to do. And neither the water nor the intense pressure could defeat the power of his faith and the courage of that conviction. He kept swimming on, strongly, purposefully, heading for the light. Splash! Takeshi sucked in the air greedily as he brought his head out of the water. Ignoring his burning lungs, he climbed into the open hole of the elevator shaft and began scrambling towards the infirmary. So we should be able to save Tsugumi now. And we got her. Alright, back to the Himmel area. 9:48 p.m. Having rescued Tsugumi from the infirmary, Takeshi made it back safely to Himmel. Sora was waiting for them back in the room. Kuronari-san, Komachi-san! I've prepared the chamber for you! Get inside, quickly! Hey, what's the rush, Sora? Although Takeshi was out of breath, he waved the flustered Sora off with his hands. Come on, you have to hurry! Relax, I've still got one more thing I've forgotten. Forgotten? What? This. Takeshi pointed to Himmel's console. There were letters written on the monitor. Willkommen limit login TY. Oh god. Element RSDS 4913A Akanagasaki Sora. Antekopi word verbal standik. I'm so sorry. Suddenly there was an intense flash of light, and from the blinding flood of light, a voice could be heard. I was able to finish the transfer just in time, says Yu. The last password and name, TY. Tanaka Yoichi. Where was this, I wondered? Was I inside someone? I couldn't see anyone. All I could hear was a voice coming from somewhere. A warm voice, a murmuring filled with peace. It was in Himmel, along with Sarah's memory. This is Yu talking. It's on that terabyte disk.
Thank you, Dad.
The voice cut out suddenly, the light faded, color gradually returned to Takeshi's field of vision. And when the color had finally returned, Takeshi opened his mouth. Ha! Click! Letting out a strange shout, Takeshi pounded the key onto the console. A round, flat wafer shot out of the disk drive. It was a single terabyte disk made out of polycarbonate. Okay, I'm taking this with me. Had Takeshi been able to hear Yu's voice? He stuffed the disk into his pocket.
Yes!
Taking a side glance at the dumbfounded Sora, Takeshi went along with Tsugumi to the other side of the glass, in the compression chamber for the IBF. So Tsugumi is panting. Slouching back in a chair, Tsugumi struggled to catch her breath. Takeshi breathed deeply and looked out the other side of the window to the control room on the other side. The door of the chamber sealed and the compression started. Sora, I guess this means goodbye for a while? Sora was standing on the other side of the chamber. Smiling softly, Sora shook her head from left to right.
No, this isn't goodbye. I don't say goodbye.
Yeah, me neither. Takeshi returned her smile.
I do not exist, and yet I exist everywhere. There will be a time when we meet again, I'm sure of it. So please don't ask me anything now.
Okay, I understand now. I don't know how, but I understand now. That the only place to find you is here, yet I can find you anywhere.
Yes.
Oh, and when you hit a button, don't forget to say click. Remember that?
Yeah, don't worry, I will remember. That's a promise, mine and yours, Professor. Thank you.
The RSD image started to warp and break up. Fog enveloped Sora from behind. Sora's image changed to a rainbow hue, and then even the rainbow started to fade. Sora's form disappeared. Takeshi watched it all happen and nodded as though he had confirmed something. It's 11 p.m. Compression complete. Takeshi and Tsugumi loaded into the elevator and headed back to the research facility. It's quiet. Yeah, you're right. The flooding should have been fairly advanced in the area above them. It was hard yet to know if any of the sections had collapsed yet, but for the moment everything was normal at the IBF. On the surface of the pool there wasn't even a ripple. Alright, so now they're realizing that everybody is gone, I think? Tsugumi ran over to Takeshi and struggled to hold him up, because now he's still sick. Takeshi would not wake up. He was breathing and his heartbeat seemed normal. Although he felt slightly hot, it didn't seem like his life was in any danger. Tsugumi carried Takeshi over to her bed. Placing her head on his chest, she closed her eyes. The light sound of their breathing gradually took on the same timing and softly filled the room. They fell into a deep sleep. And at the same time, I woke up suddenly. It's 9:31 p.m. in Leimu's infirmary. I had been sprawled out, sleeping on a bed. Getting up, I looked around. Nobody was there. I felt a pain in my left hand, and I looked at my palm. There was a large bandage on the edge of it. I was right. I had injured my hand in the Cosmic Whale room, and then I lost my memory again, and was probably brought to that room. Where is everyone? I slowly got off the bed, and I slipped on my shoes. Creak, creak, creak. Uh-oh. This stuff's groaning. The sound of metal screeching and rubbing together came from somewhere in the immediate vicinity. Another sound came to my ears, and I could tell it was an alarm ringing off somewhere far. But strangely, I didn't feel any fear. I must not have been completely awake. The inside of my head was still dim, and it was still hard to grasp the situation completely. And just then, the door to the infirmary opened. Kid! Yu jumped up into the room as though she were possessed by a demon. I found an exit we can escape through! Yu was screaming. I found an exit. I said those words to myself over and over. It took me a few seconds to grasp the enormity of these words. Where did you find it? My mind was still not fully up and running. I'll explain later, just hurry! Saying that, Yu ran out of the infirmary. Still, it took a few more seconds for my legs to get moving. It felt as though we were running on fog. My body was half paralyzed and wouldn't move in the direction that I wanted it. I shook my head, trying to get rid of the grogginess, and no matter how much I ran, I couldn't return to normal. Where is everyone else? I was barely able to hold on to my consciousness as I somehow got that question off to you.
Kurinari is going to get Mayo. Sugumi is already at the emergency corridor.
Kurinari is going to get Mayo. Sugumi is at the emergency corridor. For no reason in particular, I repeated Yu's words. Maybe she finally noticed my odd state. Yu looked at me suspiciously. We made it to the emergency corridor. Kaburaki, Sugumi, and Sarah were already waiting there. Kaburaki says, "Hurry, we don't have much time." "Not much time? Just hurry." Kaburaki grabbed my shoulder hard and started to run, turning around. Sarah and Sugumi followed Kaburaki's lead.
Listen, Leimu is already starting to collapse. We are finally able to make contact with the surface, and now the emergency stairs are accessible. But if we don't hurry, they're going to flood. So just hurry.
You grabbed my arm tightly, and tugging on it violently, she started pounding forward at full speed. It felt like I was about to fall forward, and I braced myself as best as I could, trying to keep pace with her as she pulled me forward. We flew like the wind down the painfully cramped passage, and soon we all had jumped into the emergency exit stairwell and were running up the stairs. I could hear Kaburaki, Sarah, and Sugumi, their footsteps right above me. Kaburaki says, "Hurry, this way!" I couldn't see where Kaburaki was calling, but the booming voice thundered off the sides of the metal bulkhead. Yu's eyes met mine, and we nodded to one another. Our legs pumped harder, climbing as fast as possible. The surface of the stairs was wet. The metal tube surrounding us on the emergency staircase was shaking violently left and right. I slipped and whacked my shin hard against the corner, but I felt nothing. Both of my legs started moving as if they were separate from me. My thoughts and feelings were indistinct, vague. An irresistible primal force was propelling me forward, and I handed over to the reins of that force. It was a state almost free of thought. All I could do was climb and keep climbing. A sharp metallic sound echoed painfully in my ears, and the angry cacophony shook my body to its core. With the screaming of a terrible monster, or the groan of death itself, the terrible voice was slowly and certainly closing in on us from behind.
"Just a little more, we're almost there!"
Kaburaki screamed at us from above. I briefly saw the backs of Sarah and Sugumi, who were running up ahead. The meaning of Kaburaki's words, "just a little more," hit me. Just a little more, and we can escape from here, from the bottom of the deep ocean, from out of that cage that we were trapped in. We're finally getting out. We're finally going to be free. But along with that hope, an indistinct fear was still inside of me. A heavy, dark sensation wriggled at the center of my body. It was rotten, filthy. It had stuck to the walls of my heart, stagnant and putrid. It doesn't matter. Even if you get out of here, nothing will have been solved. All the doubts that went through my mind, my legs faltered. 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps I carried forward with the doubt swelled up, replacing my elation at the rescue. You think you're really going to be let out of here? As that thought filled my mind, I already arrived at the last step in front of the door. Everyone's quiet. Nobody said a word. We wiped our sweat and struggled for breath as we glared at the huge door, which rose before us. "All right, let's go." I put my hand on the door's lever. Clank. The door unlocked. Bracing my chest and shoulder against the door, I threw my weight into opening it. Outside of the door, the sight that greeted us was a sky filled with stars. Covering the dark blue sky above was an infinite number of shimmering stars. Beyond time, beyond space, the light poured down gently on our heads from above. You, Sarah, Sugumi, Kaburaki, and I had lost all words. We could only stare at the sky from above. If I raised my hand, it seemed I could touch the sky, but not there because it was a real night sky. In that way, the drama of our escape had ended. Or at least it seemed, but I realized nothing had been solved. The slimy sense of unease still gnawed inside of me, and that indistinct notion had changed to a simmering sense of impatience, one that was ready to boil. That's right, it isn't finished. I'm not going to let it end here, because I don't know the reasons behind any of this. The time was 11:43 p.m. A new day was just waiting to begin. May 7th, Sunday. Dawn. I was in the middle of a white darkness. Before I knew it, I had become lost in another world. I didn't even have time to wonder where I was before I found the answer. The year was 2017. I could see it. I could see everything. I already knew what had happened at that time. It's 4:11 a.m. We're back in the IBF with Tsugumi. Takeshi, get up! The taxi's here. Oh yeah, remember that? That was cute. So, gotta pull this boy up out and put him into the chamber so we can get back up out onto the surface. Suddenly, a faded fragment of a memory appeared in the back of my mind. Although it had been weathered and tinged by the flow of time, it was a scene I was positive that I knew. It was a scrap of conversation between Sarah and Yubise Akikana. The Aki-yu says, "But really, that Connie, I tell you, that robot dog looks so much like the real thing. I'll bet that he's treating it like a normal pet." "Hey, didn't you have a robotic dog at your house?" "Yep, sure do. Actually, it's my mom's. I think it's one of those really old types, but it just keeps ticking along happily. It never breaks." I mean, if they were talking about Pee-Pee, that would make sense. But Pee-Pee was a robot, an electronic dog. There wasn't any proof, but looking at Pee-Pee's motionless body, it was obvious that it wasn't a dead body of an animal. Like, Pee-Pee's the mastermind of this whole thing, I guess. Like a wind-up toy that had stopped moving, Pee-Pee's limbs had frozen in an unnatural position. Takeshi and Tsugumi both observed Pee-Pee, who had become nothing more than a broken toy. Takeshi opened his mouth slightly. It seemed like it were about to say something. And suddenly, the roaring sound, the whole room shook violently. Takeshi's body flipped like a small twig and flew into the wall. Tsugumi tumbled and danced through the air to fall on the floor with a thud. Announcement says, 5 Minuten vor der Implosion. Hey, what did that announcement just say? Holding Pee-Pee under his arm, Takeshi looked up at the ceiling. Tsugumi got up quickly. "We've got 5 minutes until this place implodes." 5 minutes? Give me a break! Why do they gotta tell us that there's only 5 minutes left? Give us some more warning, for crying out loud. Anyway, we've only got 5 minutes. Tsugumi shrugged her shoulders exaggeratively and stared at Takeshi. You've just gotta accept reality. You could learn something from me, you know. Listen to yourself, Tsugumi. We're just gonna zip ahead. So now, it says, I continued to observe. I accepted the world as it was, understood it, and input it. I had no feelings. Feelings seemed to me to be something people gave out in response to the world, as a way of igniting change in their surroundings. But there, at that time, I had no physical body. I had no hands, no feet, no voice, no lungs, no organs for generating heat. In other words, I had no way of interacting with the world. Therefore, even if I had emotions, there was nothing that I could do with them. The only thing I could do was watch. Furthermore, the act of watching was different. And we're like zipping around from room to room, by the way. I don't know if you've been watching, but furthermore, the act of watching was different from what would normally be associated with sight. The type of vision that went far beyond feelings or thoughts was completely isolated, completely removed. The passage of time had condensed down to one moment, and that it had exploded in front of me. I had seen everything in one instant. One instant. Standing still in a world where time had stopped, I saw everything. Alright, so now we're back on this thing. We're getting on the submarine. Tsugumi slipped over to the driver's side of the cockpit and checked to see if the gauges were in order and flipped some switches. The hatch overhead closed automatically. Tsugumi took all the controls. The mini-sub, bubbling sounds, and sank quickly into the water. As soon as they passed in under the bottom of the IBF, the ocean's current pushed on the heavy hull of their vessel. Takeshi looked out into the ocean from a small window attached to the wall. Leimu was breaking apart. The frame started to warp and fold on itself like some crumpled old newspaper. Partitions cracked into small pieces and fluttered in the water as if they were petals falling from a flower. Letting out its final breath, Lemu spewed out fine air bubbles into the sea, which flowed gently into the current. From the twisted wreckage, black smoke rose in the water. Pieces of iron drifting on the ocean glittered from the sunlight coming from above, and at the edge of the rapidly clearing field of view, the sinking shadow of brutal wreckage could be seen. Paradise sank into a deep blue darkness, raising a spine-chilling death cry. So now we're trying to float, and we realize that we don't have enough air. And this is where Takeshi tries to sacrifice himself to push her out of the submarine. R.I.P. Takeshi. 75 meters. Takeshi paddled through the water, holding on to the railing. He closed the outside hatch. He couldn't see her anymore. 76 meters. He had let go of his last source of support and kicked the sub. Takeshi's body spun out as if it were dancing in a blue world. 77 meters. He sank towards the bottom of the ocean. White bubbles extended out beyond his field of vision, wobbling slowly upwards towards the heavens. Depth, 119 meters. Everything that he could see dissipated into the water. Outlines faded. Nothing came into focus, only light and shadow reflected in his eyes. There was one thing, however, that he could see clearly through the haze. A small white dot swaying in the distance. Dazzling light from the sky poured down on him from a single point. Its image burned into both his eyes. Blub. He let out his last gasp of air. Cold seawater poured into his lungs. A blanket of blue darkness covered him and his final resting place. His limbs sprawled out on the rocky ocean floor, and he had stopped moving like a marionette with its strings cut. It's 5:36 a.m. Kid says, "Dad." Back in the world of 2034, when I had returned to consciousness, I was crying. Feelings overcame me in torrents, rushing through me hotly. Dad is dead. The weight of sadness pressed down on me, and the sense of futility tore a hole into my heart. But it was no time to be overcome by sadness. Wiping the wetness around from my cheeks, I looked at my surroundings. The new day was breaking just as it had been in 2017. Through my tears, the blue sky and ocean came into my vision. It seemed that I was above the floating island. I could analyze the situation calmly, but the tears wouldn't stop. I wiped them away with the palm of my hand and licked the large drops as they rolled past my mouth. Squeezing my eyes shut tightly, I took in a deep breath to calm down. I trembled slightly as I tried to let out a sigh and looked around at my surroundings again. I was definitely above the floating island. The wind was blowing lightly, the green trees were swaying gently, the morning sun was letting out golden rays onto the surface of the ocean. It had been a while since I had been outdoors, the wide blue sky, the smell of the warm, humid breeze, but as beautiful as it seemed, it didn't help me one bit. Rather, the richness of it all made me feel even more alienated. I'm all alone, and so terribly sad. I wiped away the tears which continued to flow and started to suppress my urge to cry out. I had to think. There was no time to be crying. I shook my head repeatedly and tried all my strength to collect my atrophied thoughts. Think. First, I needed to grasp the situation I was in. I followed the threads of my memory. I remembered having gotten safely out of Lemu, but I had no memories after that. I had no idea what had happened after that. I couldn't imagine that I had been standing outside all night. Huh? I suddenly realized that nobody else was there. I began to walk on the grass, and I looked wildly in all directions. Soon, I became aware of one solitary figure. It was Kaburaki. He had his back to a tree trunk and was staring out at the vast ocean. I ran over to him and screamed at him. "Why would you do something like this? Answer me! I know everything now!" Kaburaki was silent. He wouldn't even look at me. It was obvious that he was the closest person to being responsible for everything happening here. Kuronari Takeshi, it was my father's name. He had used that name to deceive us the whole time. I drew even closer. "Say something, don't just stand there." "I said say something!" I grabbed onto his shirt. I'm sorry, but I can't tell you anything. Kaburaki's eyes were wet. He seemed to be thinking deeply about something as he gazed at me. But I will tell you this. This isn't over, okay? It all starts from here. Yeah, all of it starts from right now. I relaxed my grip. Kaburaki didn't say anything more and walked away, gazing in the direction of the distant horizon. Whew, we're gonna have a couple more playthroughs, I guess. I stood there vacantly staring at his back while it became smaller and smaller. Somebody tapped me on the shoulder. I turned around and Sora was standing right in front of me.
We've been waiting for you.
What are you doing here? The thought didn't reach my lips. There was clearly no RSD on the floating island, but she had just tapped me on the shoulder. I couldn't process the information and stood there, gaping in confusion. I reached out to touch Sora's arm absent-mindedly. Her skin was smooth, its texture slightly elastic and warm to the touch.
Please come this way,
Sora grinned. There was Sora, smiling as always. I felt saved by her smile.
Ooh, it's a special illustration. She's outside.
I was led by Sora into the forest. A small stone-covered path was overgrown in a deep thicket. The tips of the trees had stretched up high, almost entangling one another. Hardly any light had squeezed through, and there was no breeze there either. The air was wet, and everything felt heavy and stagnant. A small stone path snaked around randomly, and I soon lost all sense of direction as I continued walking. I moved forward along the passage with no exit, and for some reason I didn't say a word to Sora, whose back was in front of me. A special illustration of her holding my extremely tiny arm. I guess she's huge. I don't know. Like, how does this perspective work? I don't understand. What's going on? Also, wow, if you can see that hand, what is happening with those little paws? The little paws, what's going on there? Anyway. I walked up beside her and interlaced my fingers in her. That's not what interlaced fingers look like, but okay. I didn't know why I did that. I was just curious, or maybe I wanted a sense of security. Sora looked over at me and smiled. Maybe the reason I grabbed onto her was just because I wanted to see her smile at me. Not long afterwards, we finally emerged from the forest. From my field of view widened, and beyond spread out an area of lush green grass and the rich blue ocean. My line of sight was drawn to the back of someone very familiar to me. Dun dun dun! Look at this! It's you versus you! Dun 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 dun. Okay. I'm gonna cut it off here. I know it's very interesting, but we're almost there, I swear to God. Anyway, thank you for joining Ever 17. You was standing right in center of the open space and she was standing with her back to me. You versus you, the final destination. Okay, well, I'll do another one soon, and thanks for joining, and have a good day. Goodbye!